Hi, my name is Wandile Sihlobo. I am Chief Economist of the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa, and you are watching RISKAfrica TV. I think the game industry holds a great potential. And as I speak to you now, there's already some discussions which are starting to say, how do we promote the export of even the game meat from South Africa? So it is an important industry that is being looked at this time to say, how should it add value? When they say land reform is actually applicable to farms, that's not entirely correct. Land reform is applicable across. The panel, for example, that I cited, which was for land reform and agriculture, it considered across all property in South Africa. So whatever that will be decided by the parliamentary when they come up with some ideas extracting from the report on the 31st or the end of this month, those ideas will be applicable to all of the property in South Africa, and obviously to all of the land in South Africa. And obviously, when one thinks about 2020 March, whatever decided on Section 25, it applies to all land, not only limited to agriculture. Vacant and underutilized land, it's some of the things that the ANC on its policy document have identified, because they came up with some of these options, because they said they want to pursue expropriation without compensation, but not across the country, but under a certain sets of land. And that's where then we came about to talk about underutilized land, vacant land, but there still lacks some consistent definitions into those things to say, when we talk about vacant, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a piece of land that was not used for the past 20 years, and then going forward, there's no clarity about what are the building plans on that? And also, when we talk about same thing, underutilized or unused building, is it the same thing, or is it the same as the abandoned buildings that you pretty much find when you go to the inner city of Johannesburg? And if those buildings are abandoned, are they really abandoned because people couldn't control the folks that were flowing in those buildings, and then they ending up giving up on those buildings, or what's the story in there? And I think the key important thing is that South Africa has not decided as to whether they are going for expropriation without compensation, targeting those areas. That's the policy that is still under discussions. But if that's the path that was to be taken, those are the areas that might be prioritized when one thinks of this, because the ANC never said that they will look broadly to nationalization of land, but they said certain pieces of land. But nonetheless, there's still some level of risk that is also within part of that, which is why we are having some of these discussions. But I think clarity will come over the next couple of months. I think again there's a misunderstanding of thinking about land reform as expropriation. Expropriation without compensation is one tool that is underneath redistribution. But land reform as a program on its own is not an evil program, because it is a program that we can embark on even in a market-friendly approach and a sustainable way, just like we did from 1994 heading up until mid-2000s. Land reform was happening in South Africa. What gets to be important is under what conditions are you actually pursuing that to happen. And now if people talk about outstanding home loans, for example, there's no risk there, because those are not the parts of under expropriation that are being talked about if it was to apply. Again, the issue of expropriation, there's no final decision if that's the policy that will be taken. It's the one that is being discussed. But the issue of the home loans is not at any risk as far as I can tell looking at this stuff now. Within the ANC, if you talk to anybody that is in there and then you listen in there, you get a sense that there are certain people who are of the view that maybe Section 25 should not be adjusted. But within the party as well, you still get a view that there are people who are pursuing this. But obviously, the general overarching policy at which the ANC came up with in its 2017 Congress was that there is a need to investigate whether then Section 25 should be adjusted or not, in pursuit of the expropriation without compensation under certain sections of land, underutilized, vacant, hopelessly indebted, and all of those things. But they should pursue all of those objectives, not negatively influencing the investments and growth of the sector. So there is some bit of division as far as I can tell on that point. As to how they will pursue that, I think that what will be the guiding, or what's important, is what is their policy saying on this. I don't think that's the way, as best as I can tell. Because I mean, genuinely speaking, as any concerned citizen in South Africa, if you appreciate the complexity of our history, you get a sense that land reform in its own should happen. But as per whether then section change in section 25, it's really a right thing to do. Even the legal scholars, they are divided on this. There are those who say we can do it. There are those that who says we shouldn't change section 25. But my personal take would be, look at the constitution for now as it stands, but come up with the number of programs under which you think you can pursue or effectively effect land reform and those things without actually going on. Because you can go and change the constitution, but do you have even the human capital to carry throughout all of these objectives afterwards? And that remains debatable. I mean, fundamentally, to get job creation, you need to get investments. And to the message that I was saying, that if you travel to London, you travel to Boston, and you're talking to people, they're trying to raise money on behalf of South African businesses, this is one of the things that folks are bringing up to say, with this land reform stuff, what are you guys actually doing? Until we have some coherent way of how we're dealing with this program, we will continue to be starved of capital in some of the other areas. So we need to think clearly about that. And if we're starved of capital and the growth is not exciting, then there won't be jobs. And if there's no jobs, frustrations in society that you continue to see will remain being there. And that's not good for growing any society. Yeah, I mean, look, nobody wishes for their country what is currently happening in Zimbabwe now, or in Venezuela. I mean, it's a painful situation what you see happening in there. And this is the hope again that if South Africa embarks on any way, we never find ourselves down those paths. And that's what I'm really hoping for, and having worked with some of the other guys that are responsible for this policy. But as per why people like Robert Mugabe and stuff, those are really personal things. They probably have some sort of way at which they relate to that. But on my side, some of his policies is something that I don't necessarily desire. No, I think for me now, I feel much better than, say, to December 2017, because at that time we had just been dropped a view that there might be expropriation or compensation, but we never really got a sense that if this is to happen, under what conditions should it be applied, what will actually be. We were not sure even if it's a well thought out stuff now. But right now, the party seems to be open, bringing on some people. I mean, folks like myself, for example, who are partially academic and partially industry, private sector economists, coming on the table, and we are finding that people are listening to some of the ideas that we are to share with them. But what we must never lose sight of is the fact that they are a political party. They have certain political objectives to achieve, and there's also an economic angle that is coming on. And timing is everything when you're dealing with some of these things. But my sense and reading of the conversations with the people that are lawmakers that are in there is that they get it. They might not really lead us to the dogs, and as many people believe that we are heading on that side, which is where I find strength and optimism to say, guys, folks are well understanding what are their objectives, what's the limitation of their desires, and whenever they make the final decisions, it is my hope that they take the positive ones for the future of this country. And if you're a young person, you will be here for quite some time, God's willing, then you don't want the country to actually take some of the things that might put you in difficulty for years to come.